Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar on Managing MS Symptoms Part 1, Unique Approaches to Unique MS Symptoms. My name is Ann Lee Gilbert, and I'm the Senior Specialist of Programs and Online Education for CanDo MS, and I'm happy to be your moderator this evening. For those of you who are not familiar with who we are, CanDo MS is an innovative provider of lifestyle empowerment programs for those people living with MS and for their support partners. Through our programs, we help to empower people to actively co-manage their disease and move beyond their MS by adopting active and healthy lifestyle behaviors. You can visit our website at www.mscando.org to learn about these different programs that we have. Obviously, you know about our webinars that you've registered for, and you can learn about them at our website. We also have our archived webinars, where all of our webinars are recorded and housed in our website. And we also have our in-person programs. We have our 4-day flagship program called the CanDo program, which is held in the spring each year in Denver. We also have our 1-day Jumpstart programs that are held around the country about 6 times a year. And we also have our 2.5-day Take Charge program. So again, you can find information about learning more about these programs on our website. You can also connect with us on social media. We have a Facebook page, so find us on Facebook, like us, and you can get all kinds of up-to-date information regarding our upcoming programs and events. You can also connect with us on Twitter and receive the most up-to-date tweets about what's happening with CanDo MS. And also find us on YouTube. We have all kinds of fun videos and webinar recordings from the years past, and that's a great resource for all. We're also on LinkedIn and on Pinterest. We'll also have a Q&A portion to our webinar at the end of our program. You'll notice that there's a chat feature on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Feel free to chat us any questions or feedback or comments that you might have. And the presenters and I will filter through these questions and we'll save them for the end of the webinar. We usually have about 10 to 15 minutes to address these questions, and our presenters, Amy and Patty, will be happy to answer them for you. Please keep in mind that this presentation is being recorded and it will be archived on our website. So if you can't stay with us for the entire program, no worries. You'll be able to view this recording in its entirety tomorrow. And because it's being recorded, all of your telephone lines have been muted. Before we get started, I'd like to now introduce our presenters for this evening's webinar. On your screen here, you'll see Patty Bobryk, who is our physical therapist from Winter Garden, Florida. Patty is a graduate of the physical therapy program at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. She obtained her master's degree in neurodysfunction from the University of Florida in 1991. Since that time, she has worked nearly exclusively with individuals with MS for Orlando Health in collaboration with the MS Comprehensive Care Center of Central Florida. She is credentialed as an MS Certified Specialist and has earned her certification as an Assistive Technology Practitioner. Patty has been active in the Mid-Florida MS Society's Chapter Advisory Committee and has provided educational seminars for professionals and patients nationwide on rehabilitation for individuals with MS. She served as the chair of the International Organization of Multiple Sclerosis Rehabilitation Therapists since 2008 and is currently serving as secretary for the Consortium of MS Centers. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you.
We also have Amy Dix, and Amy is from Overland Park, Kansas, and she is our physician assistant. Amy Dix has been working in the field of MS since 2006. She has been a physician assistant since 2004, and she obtained her physician assistant certification at Le Moyne College and her master's degree in physician assistant studies with an emphasis in neurology from the University of Nebraska Medical Center in 2009. She obtained her MS clinical specialty certification in 2011. Amy is new to the CanDo MS team as a physician assistant in MS and offers her diverse talent scope of gait rehab, nutrition, and yoga. As a Kansas City native, Amy has established a small MS center in her hometown known as the KC MS Center. Amy collaborated with the members of her multi-specialty care team at College Park Specialty Center and Greater KC metro area to provide an infusion center, baclofen pump team, spinous gait evaluation, Botox, research, MS physical therapy, and MS support group. Her passion is in yoga, and with the partnership of Liz Franklin and MS Heartland Border Walk, she established the Sit Down and Feel Better, a program of chair yoga for people living with MS created by Liz Franklin. Presently, she is working towards attaining her Certified Clinical Nutrition certification through the Clinical Nutrition Certification Board. So I'm now very excited to welcome our esteemed presenters, Amy and Patty.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, and welcome everyone to our webinar tonight. We're really excited to be presenting this topic to everyone because we're looking at some new and maybe some novel strategies to help manage your symptoms and give you a better quality of life living with your MS. As you know, living with MS, that good symptom management is really key to living well. And our focus here is really on healthy living, on living well with your MS. Your lifestyle changes and your behavioral changes that you will make can complement your medical management. We're not promoting that you change what you're doing right now, but we might give you a few ideas tonight that will help augment what you're already doing and give you even better, more effective ways to manage your strategies and your symptoms. So here we go. The first symptom that we're going to talk about are sensory symptoms. It's a very common symptom in MS, and those of you living with sensory symptoms with your MS know them well. They can run really the gamut of sensations. You can feel numbness. You can feel tingling. It can be burning. It can be pain. You know, as little as 10 years ago, some people who were working in MS is a painless disease, and we know much differently now that there is pain associated or can be associated with MS as one of your symptoms. And the symptoms can sometimes seem very strange to you. You can have an itching sensation, or something feels hot or cold to you when really on the surface it doesn't feel hot or cold to someone else. And then there's that really not very affectionate MS hug, which is really that feeling of constriction around your thorax or your midsection. And you could have even a total loss of sensation. And it is very common, up to 90% of individuals can report some form of sensory disturbance during the course of their disease. So, you know, it's a common symptom, but it can be very nagging, it can be very disturbing, it can be very interrupting to your daily living. But it's not indicative of a worse disease course. And sometimes the sensations can actually seem really weird to you. I was evaluating a gal not too long ago, and we were talking about sensory symptoms, and she goes, gosh, Patty, I really haven't told anyone this before, but I feel a sensation of water running down the side of my face, and I go to wipe it off, and there's nothing there. I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want anybody to think that I was crazy, that there's this weird sensation. But remember, your brain is the master computer, and it controls all of our sensations. So really, there's no sensation that you feel or you couldn't feel that couldn't be a cause of what's going on in your MS. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what normal sensation is and why sensation is sometimes abnormal in MS. We often think about the brain as the master computer, and the spinal cord is kind of this major highway that all these impulses are being transmitted along. And we usually think of the brain, having a idea to perform a movement. So that message is translated down that spinal cord, down that highway headed south. It's going to go out through the peripheral nerves and make a muscle contract or have you do a motion. But what we forget sometimes is that these pathways or these roadways that we have in our neurological system are two-way streets. So there's receptors out in our periphery, in our skin and our joints and all of our organs that are our sensory organs like our hearing and taste that actually convey information that they get from our skin and from our hearing and from our eyes. They carry it up through the spinal cord, and then your brain gets it, and your brain interprets it and says, oh, that's something hot or that's something sharp. But in MS, remember that those messages can be slowed or interrupted by the loss of myelin. And so those messages coming from the periphery may not be getting to the brain in the right amount or in the right intensity, and the brain misinterprets it. And it goes, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to be doing with this information? Something must be wrong. I'll tell Susie or Joe that her hand is numb or that her foot feels burning because I think that there's something wrong there because the messages aren't getting up in the right pattern. So there's no physical reason to explain it, but you're having these abnormal sensations. Now, having said all of that, I want to make sure that everybody understands that just because you have MS doesn't preclude you from having anything else. So don't always brush everything off on your MS. Make sure that you have a thorough evaluation and everything else has been ruled out, because you can have sensory issues when you have diabetes, or you can have abnormal sensations when you have peripheral vascular disease. So it's really important that you make sure everything is ruled out before you say, oh, that's just one of my MS symptoms. So having said all of that, what can we do about it? So there are some sensory retraining techniques that we use in therapy sometimes, and they're well substantiated in individuals with stroke. We use this often in individuals who have strokes. There's a little bit of research in individuals with MS, and it's something that you can do. It's easy enough. You don't need any really particularly special equipment. And it is just really slathering your sensory system with a lot of information in the hopes that it's going to open up a new pathway that reaches to your brain, or maybe the intensity or the amount of stimulation will actually reach your brain in the right amount, and then the brain goes, oh, I'm not supposed to be feeling numb or tingly. I'm supposed to be feeling this nice little loofah brush that you're stroking me with. So some techniques that you can use is massaging the area. You can use different textures because different pathways pick up different sensations. So you have a pathway that picks up hot and cold, and you have a different pathway that picks up sharp and dull. So it's important that you use a variety of textures or sensations to kind of slather your sensory system with that. A nubby washcloth, or filling a bowl with dried beans or dried rice and then massaging your hands through it gives a lot of sensory feedback. I'm going to tell you guys about the frozen water bottle trick, and that is to take a water bottle and freeze it, and then put it on the floor and massage your foot underneath the frozen water bottle. So you kind of get a 2-for-1. You get the sensory feedback from kind of a massage, and then you get the feedback of the cold also. So that's a really neat thing. And you can also use a soft brush, or you can use things like little rollers for massage. And I'm having a little technical difficulty having the slides advance. Okay, here we go. Thank you. So those are just some pictures of, up on the upper left, are the dried beans in order to kind of give a lot of sensory symptom there, frozen water bottle, and different textures. So just a word of caution is that if you have abnormal sensation, you don't want to do anything that would injure your skin. So be very cautious about that. Be particularly careful if you're not feeling hot and cold accurately, because you don't want to injure your skin. The other thing is that the sensation should never feel noxious. You shouldn't have to tolerate something. Some people's sensations are hypersensitive. If you've ever laid down in bed and even the sheet touching your feet or your legs can kind of give you that icky sensation. So if anything that you're doing for your sensory retraining causes this noxious stimulation, try a different sensation or adjust the pressure. Sometimes just deep pressure is really a very comforting and calming sensation for you. So those are some ideas that you can use for sensory abnormalities. The next thing that we're going to talk about is exercise as actually a prescription for a whole cadre of symptoms that you may be having. Exercise can really affect a lot of the different things that you may be experiencing with your MS. there is a lot of research now to say that the deconditioning effects of inactivity that you might be experiencing can contribute to so many of the symptoms you may be experiencing that you're contributing to your MS. For instance, fatigue. If we are not physically active and we are not in good shape, we're deconditioned, we go to do an activity and that activity is hard and we say, oh my gosh, I have all this MS fatigue, when it really may be due, or at least part of it may be due to the deconditioning effects that you're experiencing. So I want you to think, as we talk about exercise, as not only part of your treatment, but as a prescription. You get a prescription for the medicines that you need to take. You have to think about exercise as a prescription, as a part of the total package of what you're doing to manage your symptoms and stay healthy with your MS. And this goes back to living well and living healthy. So we have a polling question now. So this is time for you guys to interact, and the question is, how often do you exercise per week? And so just click on your screen. I do once every other week. I do 1 to 2 times per week. I do 3 to 4 times per week, 5 to 6 times per week. I exercise every day, or I exercise once a month or less. So if you go ahead and just click on your screen and put submit, we'll get those results to you. See how often our participants on this call are exercising. And we're going to just wait for the results for a second here.
Yeah, and I think if everyone can hit skip to results, you should be able to see what the results of the survey are.
Great. Well, I'm really proud of you guys. The highest number of people are exercising at least 1 to 2 times per week, and we have a really good number, at least 25% are exercising 3 to 4 times per week, and there is a nice percentage of people who are exercising every day. So what we're going to do next is we're going to ask Amy to introduce some activities that she's been promoting in her area. And for those of you who may be not exercising or exercising very often, this section may give you some ideas on how to motivate you and engage you in some activities that will really be stimulating and get you moving. So Amy?
Thank you, Anne. Your information was wonderful on sensory retraining. I really enjoyed that. I definitely am going to take that back to my patients and share that with them in Kansas City. So moving forward, giving us a couple of different options for exercise. In our community here in Kansas City, we were looking for a way to allow not only MS patients, but their care partners or family members have an opportunity to exercise in a way that anyone could attend, whether you were, if you had a movement disorder or tremor or difficulty with ambulation or core strength. We wanted an opportunity for everyone. And with the help of Liz Franklin, who used to be in Kansas City, but now is in Colorado, and in fact teaches chair-based yoga to MS patients there and has worked with the MS Foundation to help train other yoga instructors, we created a class that's 6 days per week and 6 classes where we have yoga teachers teaching yoga from a chair. And this isn't just any old yoga. I have my instructors, they have an understanding of MS as well as the importance of movement and exercise and deep breathing. Not only does yoga help with posture and gait and ambulation by strengthening the core even from a chair, it also helps with focus, so deep breathing exercises, relaxation, and stress management, which also can help with symptom management. This is what one of our inaugural classes looked like with some of our inaugural patients and their families participating in yoga. I'm having a little trouble with the response. Okay, there we go. It was important to have chair yoga from a chair with the right kind of bolsters under our feet. So often, many of my patients sit at a desk job during the day, and they don't have the proper support to allow them to have good posture. So whether you have MS or you don't, so many of us sit at a chair, and it's important for us to maintain good posture. Otherwise, we have neck tightness or shoulder tightness, or some people suffer from migraines or headaches or worsening carpal tunnel. So some of the exercises that we teach in our classes for the care partners are useful in their day-to-day activities, working from the chair or sitting as they're driving in their car. So I encourage you to take a look at Liz Franklin's class. She has some videos online that you can participate do from home, or perhaps take a look if you're in the Colorado area for one of her classes that you could take to try out chair yoga from Liz Franklin. And then I'm trying to move forward here. Bear with me, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty. And did you have some trouble too getting the slides to advance?
I did. It was a little bit difficult. I had to do multiple. There you go.
So I went ahead and advanced the slide for you, and it should now appear on the screen.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This just is reiterating what I said before about we all use a chair at some point throughout the day, from executives or people with minimal to no disability. It was very eye-opening for the people who participated in that original class, and I find that as my patients and family members come back into the clinic, I'm really impressed with how their gait and their posture and their anxiety and mood have improved over the last several months. It's also important to remember that yoga gives you a few of the exercise tips to help with muscle tightness in our heel cords and our quadriceps, areas that can become tight most commonly in patients who are experiencing MS. And improvement in that muscle tightness can really lead to more comfort when we're getting ready to go to bed at night, or as we're trying to make a long car drive from one place to another. Yeah, and could you try to advance to the next slide too? That'd be all right. Here is Liz Franklin Yoga in Chairs. Here is her website, yogainchairs.com. And again, like I said, she has home videos that you can participate at home. And then if you want to advance again. Fantastic.
Great, and I'm gonna,
yeah, thank you.
I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to talk a little bit about another means of exercising. And many of you are familiar with this, the Wii gaming systems, the video games. And we're only using the Wii as an example because there actually has been a fair amount of research done with MS and the Wii, but there are other gaming systems out there that are interactive. And the research that has been done with individuals with MS has shown to improve balance in persons with MS, and it really helps remove some of the barriers. If you have trouble with transportation, or you have limited energy that by the time you get dressed and you get to an exercise class or you get to the gym that your energy is already depleted and you don't have enough to really work out, this is something that you can do in your home. Because it's an interactive game, the time really seems to fly by while you're doing it. It's one of those things that you become really engaged in. And there are a whole array of different games. You can pick something that you really enjoy or you like. They go from simulating playing tennis to golf to activities that will help your balance and endurance. There's a game that I love that you stand on. If you see in the right bottom corner of your screen, the platform is actually a balance board. It's a force plate that senses where your weight is distributed, and it can then interact with the game that's on your TV screen. So there's one game that I love that's a hula hoop. So you stand on the board and you're doing weight shifts like you have this imaginary hula hoop, and it's a great workout for mobility, for balance, and actually for endurance. Just one word of warning, because it's challenging your balance, and you want to make sure that you're working with your therapist or somebody who can kind of go through some of the activities with you to make sure that you're safe on the balance board, because we really just don't want you to take a fall or have any difficulties with performing while you're doing that. So get some advice from a professional if you're thinking about using this as a potential activity for yourself. So this picture on the left, the gal is standing on the balance board on the Wii game, and it actually, like I said, senses where your weight is. So her weight is shifted over to the left, and she's getting a reading on the screen that's saying that she's got 81% of her weight shifted onto her left foot, and there's only 19% of her weight shifted onto her right foot. So this can really help you if you have a weak side or you're avoiding putting weight on an extremity, to kind of get some feedback to be able to say, okay, can I increase the amount of weight? Can I get those numbers closer to 50-50? And this isn't for someone who only can stand. If you have more difficulty with your standing balance and there's some concerns in that respect, you can actually sit on the Wii balance board, and you can do a lot of the games by shifting your weight while you're sitting, which is a great option because you can get a lot of good balance work again in sitting, do a lot of great endurance work. Many of the games are also interactive with your arms. This next picture is showing a gentleman standing on the Wii balance board, but interacting with one of the games on his TV, and he's having to use his extremities. So if you think about it, this is really a high-level activity: balance, endurance, strength. Now again, I can't reinforce enough that you want to do it safely. So if this gentleman had a lot of difficulties or more problems with his balance, he could put a walker in front of him so he'd have some support that he might be able to take from the walker. Or another good idea is to put two sturdy chairs that are not on wheels next to you, so that you can have a little bit of handhold assist while you're on the balance board, so you feel a little bit more comfortable and confident. So there are a lot of different options. We're having a lot of different technologies and different ways to interact and get exercise with different technology. And Amy, can you tell us about your experiences, or what you can, another form of technology that we can use to kind of help with our exercise programs?
Sure. One of the things that I use in our clinic is a Fitbit. How many of you have heard of the Fitbit? It's become quite popular over the last few years, and I think that there's more and more research coming out from other diseases, not just MS. And there were some researchers that looked at the importance of tracking your steps, and if you can increase your daily steps by just 1,000, which is a little less, or it's about a half a mile a day, it can improve your quality of life, your endurance, your mood, and help you with overall fatigue levels. So, you know, that may not happen overnight, and it may happen by 100 steps every few weeks, but it's definitely a great goal, and I think it also can give you some other great advantages as well. So we'll next show you what the Fitbit looks like. There's several different kinds of measurement tools, not just the Fitbit. Nike has a tool. I like the ones that are on your wrist. It's not for everybody, but some of the newer technology like NewStep, which uses your arms and your feet, which is great for patients who may be in a wheelchair or not, can also keep track of your steps. Here's a couple of examples. The newer Fitbit has a great little clock on it, and then they all have some technology to track how much you're staying hydrated, how well you're eating, how many calories you've eaten that day. And I think, you know, just giving you an overall awareness of what your sleep patterns look like can all be insight into how we can help make ourselves a little healthier. I think understanding where our baseline is gives us a better idea of how we can talk to our healthcare team, physical therapist, PA, nurse practitioner, or physician, and how we can make small improvements. So here are a few other less expensive options of what the pedometers look like. There's some pedometers that are even very inexpensive at Target, at Walmart, that you can clip onto your belt loop. Some of them have the ability to also keep track of your food intake, your hydration, how well you're sleeping. I've had several of my patients bring in their Fitbit results and share with me that their sleep just wasn't what they thought it was, and it helps provide me with an opportunity to help them better with their sleep-wake patterns so that we can optimize and help improve their fatigue. So, I think that this is one tool that you can gather information and then take it into your healthcare team to find out what you can do to help improve your hydration, your sleep, your caloric intake, as well as your number of steps and exercise. So we have another polling question here up next. We'll advance the slide. It said, based on what you've heard just now, would you consider using a Fitbit or other pedometer measurement device to help monitor and tracking your steps daily? So we'll see if we can get a response here. I like this polling question. I see that there are a couple people that say that they already love their Fitbits and it's really improved their sleep and quality of rest. All right, so let me just skip to the results here to see how we're progressing. So wow, whopping 79, almost 80% to 20% of people saying that they might consider a Fitbit. That's wonderful. Here's the next slide where it shows how we can track the diet. I think this is a nice interactive tool. You can type in what you've had. If you've had chili, turkey, how much it was, and then log your food. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see you can set goals for the number of steps. So maybe your goal is 1,000 steps a day because you are maybe only walking 500 right now, or 350 on average. And then it shows you what your mileage is and how many calories you've burned. And then over here on the upper left, this is one of the Fitbit devices you can log in online and see what your food, your activity, your weight, your sleep, your heart rate and blood pressure and blood sugar goals are. So then here's what one of my favorite tools for my MS patients. I can't encourage you to drink enough water to stay hydrated. I know as an athlete and someone who exercises regularly, I sure can tell a difference when, I haven't stayed hydrated even 2 days before getting ready for a tough workout or exercise program. So this is a nice little tool to log how many ounces of water you're drinking at a time. And you can also set goals here and see the reinforcement by how blue you can make your person be with how much water you've had that day. So the next slide shows us how it can track sleep. And we'll move on to the next slide here. I think one of the things that patients have brought to my attention is how little of sleep they actually were getting. Many people think that they're headed to bed and they're getting a good 8 hours or 9 hours, and they come back and they tell me, well, I'm still tired, but we end up tracking their sleep with a Fitbit, and they come back and they're saying, gosh, I'm only sleeping 5.5 hours a night. I'm really not to bed. I was distracted with my family or children or work or stress, and then I was up earlier than I anticipated, or I think all of these things life just seems to get in the way, and if we have some good evidence as to when we're getting in bed and how well we're staying asleep and when we're getting up, we can help regulate those patterns to help improve and optimize our next day with minimizing our fatigue. And so what if we're not ambulatory is the next slide. What if we use a wheelchair, or what if we're moving a little differently? Well, NewStep is able to, which is a device that are in some physical therapy departments and gyms, which you can actually, if you are wheelchair bound or you use a wheelchair sometimes, you're able to strap yourself in and strap in your legs and move your arms and your legs, giving you a recording as to how far you've traveled to track on your own Fitbit device. Otherwise, you can use an odometer on your manual wheelchair and get exercise that way to keep track of the number of revolutions that you've had that day. I'm sure many, I know with Can Do MS, the exercise physiologists and physical therapists discussed and talked about the importance of an odometer when patients were using their wheelchairs as a form of exercise. So technologies to assist walking. Anne's going to talk to us a little bit about functional electrical stimulation. It's an exciting technology. So back to you, Anne.
Thanks, Amy. Well, it is an exciting time in our field, and there are many new technologies that are really you probably have seen headlines about robotic-assisted walking and electrical stim for people who hadn't been walking for years and years or who had a spinal cord injury and now are up and walking. So I'm going to talk to you about some functional electrical stim products that are more readily available. Many of what we see in the newspaper headlines are still research-based or are too heavy or too costly to be mass-produced right now. But we're headed that direction, and there's a lot of exciting stuff happening. So let me talk to you a little bit about what is available to us now and what you may even see in some of the clinics you'll be going to. Electrical stim is an electrode that's on the surface. It's not invasive. That a unit produces a small electrical current which can stimulate a nerve or peripheral nerve and cause a muscle contraction. Now in the old days, and I've been a therapist for 30 years, we used to have long wires and big fat electrodes and big bulky boxes and batteries and cords, and I would have to watch somebody walking and time it and push a button to make the stim go on just at the right time to make those muscles contract that I wanted to improve their walking pattern. But now we have much more compact and much more user-friendly technology, which we'll talk about in just a second. But electrical stim in general can help with muscle reeducation. It can help prevent or retard disuse atrophy. If you haven't used a muscle in a long time or you had an exacerbation and you didn't work at rehab out in your recovery, you might have the potential to improve that muscle, but if you're not using it, that muscle won't act correctly because it's going to get weak and actually shrink in size because of disuse. Electrical stim could help increase or maintain range of motion, and it certainly helps with increased blood flow. So what products are out there that actually can help us? So the walk aid is one of those products, and it's for people who experience foot drop. So this product can be used in place of a brace, and you would go through a trial with a trained professional. And if you look in in the example picture there, the gentleman is wearing a cuff which holds the electrodes, which are placed after your evaluation in just the correct spot to get the best stimulation and the best response. And that small unit there contains the battery, and it's actually where the stimulation is generated from. So with the walk aid, when you go to take a step and you bend your knee, there's a tilt sensor within that little white box that you see with the blue button on the top, the blue dial on the top. When that tilt sensor is tripped, it causes the electrical stim to go on, which causes the muscle contraction, which lifts up your foot and your toes. So it actually activates that muscle so you're not having foot drag as you take a step. So it's a really kind of cool, neat technology. Like I said, it can be used in place of a brace, but you have to be trialed for it. There's some calibration that needs to be done. And these units are not always covered by insurance, so they can be costly. So that's just some things to keep in mind when you're thinking about this technology. Another similar but somewhat different electrical stim, functional electrical stim, is the BINS. It's called the L300. It is just similar in what it does, but the setup is a little bit different. So in this unit, there's actually a sensor that goes underneath your heel in your shoe. And if you see on the picture on the inside of that gal's shoe, there's a gait sensor. So when you shift your weight off of that sensor, it sends via Bluetooth technology a message to that cuff that she's wearing where the electrodes are to cause the stimulation to go on and lift up your foot. So every time you shift your weight off the foot, off that leg that you're wearing the BINS on, that your toe is going to lift up. So there's also training modes so that you can exercise with these units on. And they're really very, very cool because they can really make a huge impact on your walking pattern. some of the pros and cons, the walk aid, you have to have really consistent knee bending to be able to make the unit work consistently. But on that unit, you don't really need to have, although I don't recommend it, you don't necessarily have to wear a pair of shoes with it, so you can walk on the beach with it if you wanted to. With this one, you absolutely need to have a shoe on because the sensor goes inside the shoe. But as long as you're shifting your weight off your leg, you're going to get really reliable electrical stim that will help improve your walking. So those are a couple of things that are just out there that you can ask your rehab professional about or your medical professional about. You'll have to go through a trial, and like I said, there's some calibrations that are required, but it's really a very cool device. And there are a couple other things that are also made by the Bioness company, and if you look in this picture on your left, some individuals have just not merely, but only have foot drop alone. But that doesn't always happen in isolation. You might also have knee weakness. So if you see in this picture, this gal is also wearing an apparatus on her thigh, which could electrically stimulate either her quadriceps, the big muscle on the front of the thigh, or the hamstrings, the large muscle on the back side of the thigh, to give you better knee control. So coupled with the lower unit that could help with foot drop, and the upper unit, which could help with knee control, could really have a really huge impact on your walking pattern and your ability to have a very efficient walking pattern. So they also make a device that's electrical stim for the hand, which can aid in hand opening and hand closing, so that you can open your hand to reach for something and then close your hand around the item. So again, some really cool things that you might ask your rehab professionals about. Another really exciting area of research, and also much more easily available, we have one in our sister clinic, but it's functional electrical stim coupled with biking. So the electrical pads, the electrodes, are on all of the muscles that are needed to simulate or to perform the activity of biking. And that's computer generated. The computer determines what muscles need to be turned on and turned off to actually do the activity of biking. So if you're very weak or even have paralyzed muscles that are no longer working, you can exercise because the electrical stim will cause a muscle contraction. You can actually exercise with resistance with these. So there has been research with this apparatus in individuals with MS, and they used individuals who were primarily wheelchair dependent. And they determined that they can exercise, individuals who are at this level can exercise safely with functional electrical stim and biking. It was also shown to improve fatigue and actually helped improve cognitive processing speed, which is wonderful. There's a lot of press and research going on about how exercise can help spare your memory. So this was actually shown in this study to show that you had improved cognitive processing speed when you exercised with this apparatus. It also can help improve your general health and wellness, because if you're primarily a wheelchair user, it's hard for you to get that cardiovascular exercise. It may be more difficult for you to get your heart rate elevated in order to get a good workout. So you're going to be at a greater risk to get secondary conditions like heart disease and stroke, which are the #1 and 2 killers in this country. So, this would be a means to, again, improve your overall health and level of fitness. So, exciting stuff. So we're going to talk about, just for a couple of minutes here, about heat intolerance. Now, I live in Florida, and it is blasted hot here all the time. I think we were up to 94 today with 90% humidity. If you're an individual with MS, a large portion of you are going to be heat sensitive, meaning that when you're exposed to heat, whether it's from the environment because you live in Florida or some other hot climate, or you have internally a fever or an infection which raises your core temperature, or even exercising, which again generates internal body heat, many or any of your symptoms could be accentuated. They can worsen in the presence of heat. So, we're all about symptom management. We want to make sure that you don't have increased symptoms. So we have to do something to manage the heat that you may be experiencing. So in this case, we're talking about heat that might be generated from the environment or from internal body heat from exercising, not the fever infection. Fever infection, you see your healthcare provider and get that taken care of. But some tools to help you stay cool. One of them is a misting fan, and it's just a squirt bottle that has a little fan at the top. And what you do is just spritz yourself and let the fan kind of cool, evaporate the moisture off your skin, which helps pull the heat off. It's kind of just a artificial sweating mechanisms, because that's what our function of sweating is. We perspire so that our skin gets moist, and as airflow comes over it, that moisture evaporates, which pulls heat from our body. So this is a really inexpensive tool. You can go on Amazon, you can get it at Target, you can get it at Walmart. For under $10 you can get one of these. They're really popular down here at Walt Disney World. They sell them all over in the parks to keep you cool while you're out in the heat. Another tool or device is the Chillo Pillow that maybe some of you have already heard about. It is kind of a gelatinous filled, this is a flat pillow. It goes on top of your pillow, or you can lay on it. It doesn't have to be your head directly on it, but any body part. But because of the makeup of it, it feels cool to the touch, and it's going to cool you down. And you can go on their website and learn a little bit more about it, but it's another way just to keep your body temperature a little bit cooler. This next product, Amy turned me on to, and it's called Hot Girl Pearls. And it's really very, very nifty. They look like a pearl necklace, and they're actually filled with another gelatinous product, and you keep it in the refrigerator or in the freezer. And when you're going out, especially if you're going to go somewhere nice, you're going to go out to dinner and you don't want to wear a wet cooling scarf, you can put this on. It looks like a very cool necklace, and it will keep you cool. So you keep cool to look hot. And if you go on their website, they can tell you more about the product. But it's just really something that's kind of a neat little thing that you look like you're wearing stylish jewelry, and you're really just using a method to keep yourself cool. Another thing that I've been recommending, if it's within people's budgets, is to get a remote car starter. What it does for you is, for example, I might have somebody who comes to the center for therapy at 9 o'clock in the morning, and yeah, it's warm, but it's not the heat of the day. And their car is parked out in a parking lot that doesn't have any shade, and it's on black asphalt. And they may be getting physical therapy and occupational therapy, and then they leave our center at 11 o'clock, and they open their car door, and it's 250 degrees inside the car. And just sitting in that car waiting for the car to cool down sometimes is way too much heat for somebody to really manage and be okay. Many times their symptoms will increase. In fact, we had a gal that happened to. She had the real presence of mind to call back up to us on her cell phone and says, I really feel weak. I don't think I can drive home. So we went downstairs, got her in there, cooled her down. We started her car for her, cooled it down so she was safe to drive home. So the remote car starter will allow you to stand inside a cool, air-conditioned building and start your car up, have it cool down before you walk out. Now, if you can't afford a cool car starter like this, be prepared. If you know you're going to be out and you're going to be returning in the heat of the day, or there's that potential, then pack a little cooler in the car, keep an ice drink in it, keep a wet cold towel in it, or your cool tie in it, or your hot girl pearls. And as soon as you get in the car, start it up, turn on the air, drink something cold, put the wet cold towel around your neck. So you're using some strategies to keep cool until your car cools down. It can be a real issue. This next thing is that there actually was a research study to determine what's the number one way to keep yourself cool, and that's by eating or drinking a icy drink, something like a Slurpee. Now, I put an X through it just because Slurpees have a lot of sugar in them. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit more healthful, you might try shaved ice with some flavorings. Even if you put something like the low-calorie Gatorade, the G2, that has like 9 grams of sugar in it in 16 ounces, and you wouldn't put a whole 16-ounce bottle on that, lower calories. So, be a little bit more mindful of what you're putting in your body, and that's just one way to have a nice little treat and keep yourself cool. As we're talking about nutrition and things that are good for us, Amy, can you share with us some of your thoughts on cleaning up your diet and how that fits into a healthy lifestyle?
Sure. Thank you, Anne. Those are wonderful slides with great suggestions on how to stay cool, and those are a lot of great things that even are applicable to those of us in Kansas City as the humidity rises and our heat index climbs to 90 or above. So cleaning up the diet, I like to talk to my MS patients and people living with MS a little bit about optimizing overall health. So we have this diagnosis, this unwanted friend in the room that is MS that's decided to come and live with us and join our family without our permission. What can we do about it? What are the things we can do? And the things we can do are optimize our underlying nutrition, diet, lifestyle, and we've talked a little bit about some of those things tonight, including exercise and steps and WeFit and finding the activities that we can do. And I think one thing we can also do is be more mindful of what we eat. Be more mindful of how much we drink and how hydrated we are with water. Cleaning up the diet is important, and just because we have MS doesn't mean that everything is going to only be pertaining to our multiple sclerosis. There was actually a study on patients who had MS and an elevated blood sugar index called a hemoglobin A1C, which is just an average of your blood sugar over 3 months, and they found that those patients who didn't actually have diabetes yet, but had elevated blood sugars and a hemoglobin A1C that hadn't really actually changed just yet, but just plain old elevated blood sugars had actually worse MS than those patients who didn't have elevated blood sugars. So what does that mean? It means we've got to take a closer look at our blood sugars, maybe take a good look at our cholesterol. Do we have coronary artery disease? Are we addressing our lipids with our primary care physician or cardiology colleagues? What does your blood pressure look like? Are you in your ideal body weight? When was the last time you had a DEXA scan? There's been research to show that bone loss happens even before an MS patient is diagnosed, and it's important for us to monitor our bone health. What about even a general physical? When was the last time you had a general physical? I think often my patients come to me and they say, well, I want you to be my primary care physician. And the truth is that we need our primary care physicians, our OBGYNs, our cardiologists, our internal medicine colleagues to help in taking good care of our patients and patients living with MS. So it's just a nice reminder to make sure that we're taking a look at our overall health, not just our MS medication and our MS therapy and our MS management. So moving on, cleaning up the diet. I'm not sure if I'm able to advance here. What is clean it up? What does that mean? Patients will say to me, I don't like veggies. I don't know how to cook. What diet is right for me? I said, keep it simple, and here are a few basic tips in my next slide. Step one, I think that there are a lot of great books out, but just some good common sense advice is there something when we're going shopping at the grocery store or someone's shopping with us or for us, when you're looking at the food that's in front of you and the ingredients, is this something that my great-great-grandmother would recognize as food? So often we see food in plastic bags and push-up tops and all sorts of things. Well, those are definitely modified items, and they're probably not in their natural state. So do what you can to eat fresh fruits and fresh vegetables that look like something your great-great-grandmother would recognize. And step two, most of those foods are actually found in the periphery of the grocery store. So shop the periphery. That's where all the fresh fruits and veggies and fresh meats are. step 3, avoid fast food. I'm sure many of you have seen the documentary Super Size Me or Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Those are great informative documentaries as to what can happen if we eat fast food for more than several weeks at a time. So it's not a bad idea to avoid those drive-thrus and McDonald's. Boy, you know, our cholesterol and blood pressure and all those other comorbid conditions definitely take a toll on our bodies and make dealing with our MS a little bit more difficult if we're also dealing with them as well. And then finally, drink 2 liters or 64 ounces of water daily. You want to make sure that you're monitoring. I talked about this earlier in the program, but I really can't stress enough the importance of hydration. I think it's a great way to help us stay cool, to make sure that we're you know, doing what we can to eat and stay hydrated. And the next slide. So, you know, clean up the diet. One of my favorite authors, Michael Pollan, says eat food. Not too much, mostly plants. In his book, In the Defense of Food, or in his online documentary, Food Inc. And I would recommend those books for you. He doesn't really talk about an ideal diet or a way of eating. He mostly just talks about good common sense. Eat the things that are fresh and available to you. And then what I'll leave you with is you are my inspiration. All right, this next slide. So we all have someone or some person that is better than we are, and we all have someone that's maybe not as good as we are. So take advantage of what you can do and make sure that you're doing what you can do every single day, and make a commitment to yourself and to your family and to your healthcare team that you're going to do what you can on a daily basis to squeeze the juice out of life. So look for inspiration wherever you can. I really liked this inspiring man. You know, he's still zip lining and doesn't have any legs, and you know, doesn't walk perhaps in the way he used to, but he's still making it happen for himself, just like you can. There are things you can't do, but there sure are things you can do. So let's stick with that. And I think we get to move forward for questions.
Absolutely, and thank you, Amy and Patty, for that informative webinar. And I love that last slide that we just had up, and I think it kind of talks to the philosophy of Can Do MS, of wanting to inspire and empower people living with MS to just get out there and focus on the things that they can do. So thank you for that, Amy. We got quite a few questions. And we actually had a lot of questions about the MS hug, and this is something I've never heard of. And Patty and Amy, I'm not sure if you guys can talk about it, but I felt like I needed to bring it up because we did get so many questions about this. And it's just a general question of you know, if there are any ways to kind of help this symptom, and maybe talk a little bit about what exactly the MS hug is.
Right. I'll be happy to start with that, and Amy, please join in if you have some suggestions.
Absolutely.
Also, the MS hug is really just the sensation around your midsection that you're being kind of squeezed or you feel constricted, and it may just be a sensory symptom, but it also may be due to some spasticity or stiffness. It may almost feel like it's hard for you to get a really deep breath in. So some of the techniques that I talked about earlier about doing some brushing with a soft brush, or even with kind of a softer sponge, is some ways that may give you some relief from that symptom. But also stretching is a really good way. If you can get some good exercises to stretch out your trunk, even sitting and then just tilting your trunk to one side and raising that arm up over your head to stretch out that trunk, or doing some trunk rotations can sometimes help alleviate that symptom. And you know, I don't know whoever named it. I don't know the author or who tagged that as the MS hug, but it's really not an affectionate hug, and it's really kind of a nagging and very kind of irritating symptom. Amy, do you have anything to add about the MS hug?
Yeah, I guess this is just a great time for a little reminder for everyone that anytime you have a new symptom that lasts greater than 24 hours, that's a new symptom, that is a symptom that maybe is an old symptom you've had that you haven't had in a while, you need to let your healthcare team know, because it can be a sign that there is an MS exacerbation underway. And I think, an MS hug is one of the signs that you might be having an MS exacerbation, especially if it's new. If this is a symptom that you have ongoing, just like you spoke to, and it's something that you're trying to cope with, that's one thing. But if it's new or it's changed, I really encourage you to be that squeaky wheel and place the call into your healthcare team and let them know that you've had a change in your symptoms and you want to make sure that you're not having an MS flare, an MS exacerbation. And I guess, there were a lot of questions too that, just basic questions on menopause and MS and, MS and spasticity. There were a couple of questions about, what if I can't bend my knee, or what are my options? And I think that there are a lot of options that we didn't have a chance to talk about, but they include Botox that we can use not just to make us pretty, but to help with movement and mobility in our extremities. There's baclofen or medications that help with muscle spasms. There are muscle relaxers, magnesium. There are other things we can do to help with the spasticity. If you're having trouble, again, I just honor your body and make sure you're writing these questions down so you can talk to your healthcare team about them, because there are things you can do.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. And that actually it did bring me to the question about spasticity, because we did have several on that. And Patty, I wanted to ask you, did you have any other kind of recommendations about spasticity? We got a few questions, for example, this person has spasticity in their legs and it causes them to suddenly pull really hard when they try to stretch them. Do you have any suggestions for that? If anything they can do at home? Or
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. And, just kind of that we're all on the same level playing field, I saw a question about what is spasticity. And spasticity is this abnormal stiffness that you might have in any part of your body. There's an imbalance in the impulses that are going on in your neurological system. So there are impulses that make things work and impulses that quiet things down. And when those impulses are out of whack, you can get abnormal tone or spasms or spasticity. There's a lot of terminology that we use to describe this, but it all means the same thing. If you hear the word hypertonicity or increased tone or abnormal tone, that all means the same thing. And it can be so great that it can actually cause your limb to move. It might draw it up, or you might go to move and you didn't volitionally want to, but maybe your leg extended out straight and your toe pointed down, or your arm drew up and your hand fisted. Or it might not be that great, but you have this feeling that you're kind of moving through mud, or that everything is stiff and tight, and that if you've particularly sat for a while, that you go to get up and you feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm 90 years old. Everything feels really tight and it's hard for me to move. So that's a description of spasticity. And as Amy had mentioned, of course you want to tell your healthcare providers about that, because there are medications that can assist with that. But the number one thing that we do, particularly from a rehab perspective, is stretching. Stretching, again, there was this research study that they did. They looked at stretching alone, then they looked at the medication baclofen alone, and then the combination of stretching and baclofen together to see what its impact on giving you less spasticity. And certainly the combination worked the best, but stretching alone and baclofen alone did a good job too. So, in our center, if somebody has mild spasticity, before our doc starts them on medication, they get sent to rehab for a good stretching program. Now, a word of warning that you can't be over-aggressive with your stretching, because if you overstretch or you're too aggressive with your stretching, it can actually cause you to have more spasticity, or it will cause one of those spasms. So I tell people to go low and slow. Okay, you kind of have to sneak up on your spasticity, and you have to hold it at least a 30-second count. So when you're doing a stretch, got to go easy. You want to feel just a stretch discomfort. You don't want to be peeling yourself off the ceiling because it hurts so bad. And you have to hold it at least a 30-second count. You can do that a couple times on each side. And I recommend stretching every day, even several times a day if you can, particularly if you have an area that's particularly problematic. Say, have a calf that always wants to spasm or has spasticity on it. So you might do a stretch before you get up to do any long distance walking, or stretch as you get up from your desk or when you get out of the car. So that's really kind of one of the best way to help manage your spasticity.
Great. Thank you, Patty. Amy, this question is for you. We were asked if the Fitbit is waterproof, and is this a good thing to use to track swimming? And if not, would you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I'm not so sure it's so great to monitor how many strokes you're taking. It monitors movement. So, anytime you're moving your arms, it may keep track of that. The Fitbit device itself on the phone, you can track the type of exercise you've done and the length of time as well as the intensity. So it can give you a better idea of how many, not necessarily steps, but how active you've been during that period of time and how many calories you've burned. My understanding is that you can wear it. It is waterproof.
Excellent. Thank you.
I did notice one other thing I wanted to point out, and
Sure.
It was from George. He said that Columbia has a moisture-wicking shirt with active cooling beads. Either perspiration or misting causes the shirt to become cool. I think that this is really a wonderful suggestion. Thank you, George, for reminding me to say something to this effect. I think that there are several companies now that are looking at ways to help cool down our professional athletes, college and professional football players, etc. And they've really put in a lot of effort in figuring out a way to keep them cool and optimize their core body temperature. So great for them, but even better for all of us, because if they're willing to pay for the research and create this wonderful cooling wear, boy, we all can benefit. Not just if we're living with MS, but those of us that get temperature sensitive when we're running in the crazy Kansas humid weather or crazy Florida humid hot weather and trying to exercise outside. So George, thank you again. But Columbia, and I think there may be some other products that are available too. They have some sleeves that also have some moisture wicking properties as well. So
awesome. Thanks. Yeah, there's clearly a lot of resources out there. We just got to kind of get out there and search for them. Let's end with this one final question. And Patty, I think maybe you could touch on this, and Amy, you as well. This person is asking about how much they should be exercising. So they say, I'm currently going through a relapse at this time. I usually exercise 6 to 7 days a week. Should I stop exercising, or how much should I back off of what I do? How far should I push myself?
Really good question. So these are my recommendations, and Amy, you can give your perspective. If somebody's going through an exacerbation at the current time, you might actually even be getting, IV Solumedrol as part of the treatment for your exacerbation. I ask people while they're getting their IV Solumedrol just to limit themselves to their stretching exercises. Your body's going through a lot. You're, dealing with a lot of different issues. You may be dealing with some side effects from the drugs. So I give you a little bit of an exercise holiday. But once you're through that part of the treatment, then I ask you to start back. The thing that you have to do is that you have to reframe your exercise, and that's really a challenging thing. You will have to go slow and easy, and you may be dealing with some new symptoms that you hadn't dealt with before. So at that time, it's really important to be reevaluated. Hopefully you've established a relationship with some rehab therapists, or you have a good relationship with your healthcare providers that can give you some counsel on what you need to be focusing on. if you have a particular deficit that you're left with after the exacerbation, we want to make sure that we're dealing with that. If you're going to be expending your energy, I always say you want to get the most bang for your buck. So you want to make sure that you're working on the things that are going to give you the best and most beneficial functional results. So if you're working out on your quads, but your quads aren't weak, really your hamstrings are weak, and you're not working those out, then you're really not spending your energy in the area that you really need to. So getting some advice about what you need to be doing and how you need to change your exercise program after an exacerbation is really, really important. Now, as far as the number of times that you exercise a week, I recommend that you stretch daily, 7 days a week, no days off. You should do strength training 2 to 3 times per week. You should be doing aerobic training 2 to 3 times per week. And then if there are any special concerns, like if you're having a balance issue, then we'll add those in also. So you're going to be alternating. What I like to do is stretching every day, and then you're alternating between strength training and aerobic conditioning on each opposite day.
Excellent. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I think that that concludes our Q&A. Again, Patty and Amy, thank you so much for presenting this evening and for giving us all of these cool new tips that I think I will even take home and use on these creative approaches to treating MS symptoms. Before I talk about our upcoming webinars, I did want to briefly describe some of the other online resources that Can Do MS has to offer. We have our e-news, which is a newsletter. It's an electronic newsletter that is created monthly, and they're all saved on our website. And if you're on our mailing list, you'll also receive these e-news articles, and they feature all of our upcoming events and programs. So it's a great way just to keep in touch with all of Can Do MS's happenings. We also have a question and answer webpage on our website. It's called Ask the Can Do Team. And this is where you can submit any questions that you might have, whether you're the person living with MS or a support partner. If you have any questions about the disease or about multiple sclerosis, you can submit them online, and they will be forwarded to our programs consultants. And we will get back to you one way or another from our staff or from our MS experts. So please remember to visit that and use that to answer any of your questions. We also have our Can Do library, and this is a portal where you can find different library articles that are written by our program consultants on specific topics on health and wellness. So we have an array of articles that you can sort through, and again, you can find all of this on our website at mscando.org, so don't be shy and come visit us. You may have noticed that our topic today was a part 1 of MS symptoms. So we do have a part 2, which will focus on mood and cognition issues. And this will be our September webinar on September 9th. We'll have a psychologist, Peggy Crawford, and our speech-language pathologist, Jeff Hodgson, on this webinar. So please remember to also register for this webinar. It will also be recorded and housed on our website, but join us again on September 9th for the second part of this webinar series. And our next webinar in August, on August 12th, is on relapse. It is recognizing and rebounding from an MS relapse. Gail Hartley, nurse practitioner, and Sue Kushner, a physical therapist, both programs consultants with us, will be presenting that webinar. So please remember to join us again next month as well. We appreciate all of you for participating in our programs. And once this presentation is over, you'll see a survey appear on your computer screen. We'd be so grateful if you could just take a moment to complete that survey and share your input. All of your feedback really helps us to improve our webinars and bring topics to you that you want to hear about. You will also receive a copy of tonight's webinar slides in your email, so please keep a lookout for that. It will be in a PDF file, so that way you can kind of review all these great tips that Patty and Amy have gone over tonight. So again, thank you so much, Patty and Amy, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing everyone again on a future webinar, and thank you so much and have a great night.